mom's been diagnosed with terminal cancer. They've given her a prognosis. I don't know what to do. As I tearfully told my husband about my mother's condition, he casually responds without taking his eyes off his smartphone. I could not hide my anger at his attitude, not knowing whether he was listening or not. However, I didn't want to be upset by talking with him. I'm thinking I want to spend her final moments together. I want to live with my mom in this house. Of course, I won't be a burden. Of course I don't want that. If we're with someone who's nearing death, she'll suck the life out of us. Wouldn't it be better if she spent her final moments in the hospital with others who are close to death? Well, at worst, I guess I could tolerate it if she will stay in the attic. Those two laughingly reject the idea of moving my mother with terminal cancer. Despite her prognosis and the fact that her time is limited, they didn't listen to me at all. And then, within half a year, my mother passed away. I was engulfed in sadness. There was a hole somewhere in my heart and I couldn't feel anything. As time went by one day, I was called by my husband, who said he wanted to talk. Mom has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. So what? What's his point? They are the ones who abandoned my mother. I want them to experience the same pain. I'm a 30-year-old housewife living in Tokyo. I became a housewife shortly after marrying my husband, and it's been about 2 years since then. I used to have a job, so I wanted to continue my job even after getting married. But my husband wanted to have children, and because he works for a large company and earns a decent salary, we decided that I would become a housewife. Well, as it was already decided, I took care of all the household chores perfectly, and we actively tried to have a child. I managed to redirect my enthusiasm for work towards household tasks. I was able to live a somewhat fulfilling daily life, but there were some concerns. It was the presence of my mother-in-law, who often visits. Hello. Oh, you haven't finished your laundry yet? Seems like you haven't vacuumed either. What have you been doing since this morning? I'm sorry. I've been at the city hall since this morning. I'll bring you tea right away. Please have a seat and wait. I prefer coffee, not tea. Don't you have coffee? We do have it, but only instant coffee. Oh, are you planning to serve me instant coffee? Don't be so disrespectful, okay? It's sold near the station, so go and buy it right now. She comes to visit without any notice, complains about my housework, and even makes me go out to buy coffee. I wondered if she was just rude to people in general, or if she simply wanted to bully me as her daughter-in-law. I was quite troubled by her. As a housewife, I'm usually at home, so I naturally have many opportunities to interact with her. I couldn't avoid it because of the busy work, and it was causing me a lot of mental stress. Since she lived nearby, she would come over and visit almost every day depending on her mood, so I always had to be mindful in my daily life. It was mentally exhausting to constantly try to avoid complaining whenever she came over, and the thought of this kind of life continuing indefinitely was a source of stress in itself. One day, as usual, my mother-in-law came to the house in the morning and followed me around while I was doing household chores, constantly finding fault and complaining. Apologizing, I did the household chores again as instructed by her, hoping she would leave soon. At that moment, my phone rang. It was perfect timing, as she was in the middle of complaining to me, so I immediately answered the phone. Hello?
Please come to Sky General Hospital, Retribution away. Your mother has been urgently transported to the hospital. I was at a loss for words due to the sudden news. At first, what you mean? Weary about it, I thought it might be a prank call, but the caller was clearly not a child.
Without understanding what was happening, I was at a loss for words when I got a call that she had collapsed at work and was urgently transported to the hospital. My mother, who will be 67 years old this year, lives alone and continues to work part-time for a living. Since she had always claimed to be healthy, I was completely shocked by this phone call, and my mind went blank. My mother collapsed. I'm going to the hospital. Don't joke around. Anyway, I'm going to the hospital now. Excuse me. I was annoyed by my mother-in-law's complete lack of concern despite my mother's collapse, but I hurriedly headed to the hospital. My mother had already regained consciousness and was lying on the hospital bed. However, when she saw my face and smiled, I felt a little relieved. Even though it was only a little, a burden was lifted off my shoulders. I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that my mother was alive. I was really shocked when I heard you collapsed. I'm sorry for worrying you. Well, I've been sleep-deprived lately, so maybe that's what caused it. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again, so you don't have to worry so much. I'm really glad, but take care of your health, okay? As I watched my mother, who was smiling as usual, I gradually regained a sense of relief. However, I also realized that my mother was just putting on a cheerful facade, and that age was taking its toll on her. It may sound insensitive, but when I received the news that she had collapsed, for a moment, I wondered if she might pass away like that. So, just the fact that she regained consciousness made me truly happy. After that, my mother was hospitalized for a short period and underwent detailed examinations. Since she'd been too focused on work and hadn't paid much attention to her health, I realized that I needed to start watching over my mother a little more after this incident. 1 week after the detailed examination, when I went to visit my mother, she informed me of an unbelievable fact. The results of the detailed examination came in. They found cancer. What? It seems to be in the terminal stage. They say I might have about a year left to live. It looks like I'll have to stay in the hospital for a while. But if there's no chance for recovery, I'm thinking of stopping the harsh cancer treatment and spending time at home. My mother spoke in her usual tune, but I couldn't find the words to respond. I was desperately holding back tears and couldn't utter a single word. However, there was still time. I decided to take it positively and make sure to fulfill my final duties for her. And that night, is something wrong? Well, I've something to tell you. Actually, I went to the hospital earlier, and they found out my mother has terminal cancer. It seems she only has about a year left to live. As I said that, my voice stopped coming out. It felt as if my heart was being crushed, and I gradually started to hyperventilate. My head was starting to panic, but my husband was completely absorbed in his smartphone, as if he didn't care about someone like me. I managed to take a deep breath and regain my composure, and I resumed speaking. So, I want to be with my mother during her final moments. Of course, I won't cause any inconvenience. I just want to live together in this house. Is that okay?
But it's Dessner. Trust, obviously. I only do that. I don't do that. Give me a break. I absolutely don't want someone with a limited time left to be around. That's just awful. But
Wouldn't it be better for them to spend their final moments in a hospital where there are lots of companions? Because there are plenty of patients like her there. Well, if she will stay in the attic, I guess I could reluctantly agree.
As I desperately held back tears and made that request, the two of them laughed and said that, in that instant, seeing their reactions, I realized that the trust I had built with my husband and the relationship with my mother-in-law were crumbling all at once. What do these people think of human life? Do they only prioritize their own feelings and never consider mine? I never thought they would be so heartless. I struggled to restrain the impulse to punch them, clenching my fists tightly. If care is necessary, I'll do it all, and she can live in my bedroom. It's not about you being a burden. That's not the issue here.
It seems like you have a morbid interest in being with someone who's about to die, but I don't share that interest. As Barnes, won't she be hospitalized?
The patient who makes selfish demands wants to spend her last days at home. Instead of listening to such selfishness, she should be hospitalized. But you have your job as a homemaker, so caregiving is impossible, right? If I kept talking to these people any longer, I felt like I might really lose control and hit them, so I silently stormed out of the house. I think the two inside understood just how angry I was. However, even if they knew that, I don't think their feelings would change. Anyway, I was overwhelmed by sadness and pain over my mother's limited time left and the anger I felt towards those two. My mind was a mess. Fixed to yours, in that state, I headed straight to the hospital and told my mother exactly what those two had said.
I see. Sorry for causing you any trouble. Will, I may be saying something irresponsible, but I do have some savings. Albeit not so much. I'll also receive a pension, so you won't have any financial burden because of me. I would be happy if you could visit me once a week.
Not just once a week. I'll come see you every day. When I said that, my mother smiled warmly. Ideally, I would have left the house and lived with my mother. However, as a full-time housewife, I have no means of earning money. Even if I relied on my mother's savings and pension, it wouldn't be enough for both of us to live on. As if I were to live with my mother, getting a job was a minimum requirement. However, there was one reason why I couldn't do that. To my surprise, I hadn't had my period for 1 month, before my mother's terminal cancer was discovered. I had slept with my husband often, so I must have become pregnant at that time. I think I'm pregnant.
Oh, are you serious? That is amazing! That's amazing! We finally have a child! And now I'll be a father too! I'm truly happy. Can't dismiss this as a crime.
My husband was overjoyed about the pregnancy like a child. And I was happy too, but the joy didn't last long. Half a year later, my mother passed away. It happened so suddenly, and I was overwhelmed by a tearing sensation in my chest. Large tears streamed down from my eyes, and I couldn't control my emotions as I cried uncontrollably. Memories of my mother played in my mind over and over, each time causing a painful sensation in my chest, but no matter how much I cried, my mother wouldn't come back. For the sake of the child that would be born, I couldn't continue being sad, so I made an effort to forget my sorrow. As my belly continued to grow steadily, I gave birth to a baby boy. He was like a reincarnation of my mother, and I was genuinely happy. Unlike the tears shed when my mother passed away, these were tears of joy. However, one day, 1 month after the child was born, I received a call from my husband. I was truly shocked and couldn't find the words to respond. My husband probably feels the same way I did 6 months ago. To suddenly learn that his own mother has terminal cancer, he must be at a loss. My husband said this and hung up. Is he serious? If he is, it's pretty bold. I've often thought about divorce, and now seems to be the right time. I prepared the divorce papers and put them on the table. I packed my things and left the house. I made arrangements to stay with a relative for the time being. That night, I received a phone call from him. Has he forgotten what he said to me? During the difficult time when my mother was suffering from terminal cancer, what did he say to me? Since he seemed to have no recollection, I decided to respond with the same words. I have no interest in living with someone who is close to death. She's not even my family, so if you want to take care of her, do it on your own, right? But those were your own words, weren't they? Don't you remember what you said? When I said that, he fell silent. Well, what I'm saying is not wrong, and I don't think he can argue against it. But if I were to be treated so selfishly, I would be troubled too. Anyway, come home once so we can talk it out. If I hire a detective and investigate, I can easily find out where you are. So don't try to escape, okay? I didn't expect him to say this much. Besides, he could really do something like that. I was also scared of being stalked, and I had to consider my child, so I decided to go to my husband's house for now. As soon as I entered the house and came into view of my mother-in-law, she turned red-faced and started yelling, "Who do you think you are, huh? Going the house on your own, you bastard?" It's perfectly normal to not want to live with someone who is nearing the end of their life. I believe it's very common, isn't it? You said the same thing, didn't you? Chuba, don't say such disrespectful things to the person herself. You, by engaging in acts that betray others, don't you feel anything? I haven't received any care from your mother at all, but how much care have you received from me and my mother? Considering that, it's only natural for you to take on caregiving. The numerous acts of bullying I've endured so far, can it be said that I've received care? It was my husband who has been treating me badly all along, and it's my husband, not me, who received care. Can't they even understand such a simple thing? It made me feel angry, but I didn't come back to this house to be verbally abused by these two. Well, whatever. For now, there are only 2 reasons why I came here today. Just like you didn't do it for me. I won't cooperate with you at all. And I'll also be demanding compensation for the infidelity, you know? Infidelity? When I talked about wanting to live with my mother, you were absorbed in your smartphone, right? At the time, you glanced at the screen. I saw a lot of heart emojis, so I thought, could this be it? And well, I was in a really bad mental state at the time, so I didn't really start looking into it until quite some time later. It seems that he never expected to be accused of infidelity and speechless and astonished, unable to offer any counter-arguments. My mother-in-law glared at him, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. I wanted to see the look on their faces. I shouted, "Sire, is it right? I won't extend a helping hand to someone who engages in such betrayal. I mean, I wouldn't offer help, would I? If you don't agree to a divorce. I'm fine with talking this matter to court, and as for compensation and child support, you better pay them properly. Of course, I won't allow any contact between my son and you two. I won't show my face to either of you from now on." As I said that, the 2 of them were shocked. They were happy when I gave birth, just like me, so I assume their child is as precious to them, if not more. However, I can't let one beloved son be associated with someone who trivializes human life through infidelity. ACTs and batch kunsi apologize for the infidelity, but how are you going to live on your own? And what about the compensation? It won't be deposited immediately. Even if it's not immediately deposited, I have my mother's life insurance, so I received a certain amount of money from that, so I can live without compensation. I'm not foolish enough to divorce without any consideration. It seemed like they were trying to exploit my financial disadvantage at the very end, but they were wrong if they thought they could stop me with that. Besides, there's the matter of infidelity, and considering that our child is still young, I'll most likely have custody. If we get divorced, I won't need to take care of my mother-in-law anymore, and I can completely sever ties. The hatred that had deeply rooted in my heart was peeled off cleanly, and I felt truly refreshed. After having that final conversation, I left the house. Then I asked a lawyer to claim compensation and child support, and the divorce papers were successfully filed. However, 6 months later, my ex-husband managed to locate the house where I was living with my relatives, and he came to visit. You're acting like a stalker. It's disgusting. Hey, I'm begging you. It's been a month since you left. I'm exhausted from taking care of Mom. I want to see my son. I keep making mistakes at work due to stress. I'm struggling financially. Please, I truly apologize. Please help me. It's only been a month since then, but I felt his appearance seemed to have aged about 10 years, and it was clear that he was under significant stress. However, just because he's under stress, does he think I'll go easy on him? We have a rule after the divorce that you don't come near us, right? If you can't even follow that, I'll report you to the police. The police? Stay away from us. I just said that and firmly closed the front door. Startled by the mention of the police, my ex-husband obediently left, and from then on, he never appeared near us again. However, whether he thought he could just avoid meeting me or not, he kept contacting me repeatedly. It was annoying, so I immediately deleted his contact information and explained the circumstances of our divorce to mutual acquaintances. After that, he stopped contacting me through friends, and it seemed that he was cut off by almost all of our mutual acquaintances. While dealing with the exhaustion of caregiving and the financial stress of child support and alimony payments, he faced significant stress and seemed to reach his mental limit. He made a major mistake at work, received a demotion, and his salary was greatly reduced. However, since the amount he has to pay me hasn't decreased, he somehow manages to contain living expenses and work hard. And by the time he cooks and does household chores, it's already midnight, and the next morning he goes to work. He leads a life without any breaks, and he has become thin and worn out. It seems that he truly regrets what he did to me. By the way, my precious son and I have rented a new place, and we are able to start our new life. For the sake of my mother watching over us from heaven, I intend to live a happy life together with my son. That is the greatest way I can show filial piety.